Okay. Yeah. Season 1, Episode 3, Code of Honor.
You sound so enthused to be here today, Tyler.
It's an episode that Jonathan Frakes, the guy who plays Riker, has referred to as a racist piece of shit. Michael Dorn, the actor who plays Worf, has called it the worst episode of Star Trek ever filmed. So that's where we're at. Yeah.
Like, I didn't even know that. Like, it is the very...
It's bad. So, that's where we're at.
It's just funny to me, because I was talking to Tyler here through text chat before we started recording this episode, because he basically just finished watching it, and he's just sitting there going, oh my god, I want this to be over with.
Alright, so the start of the plot summary, for people who haven't seen it in a while, I wrote it out here. The episode opens with the Enterprise going to a planet to negotiate for the use of a rare vaccine that the planet produces. The Enterprise beams a party of the aliens who are tribal-looking African men aboard. After Tasha Yar impresses the aliens with her dedication via flipping one of them onto the ground for telling her to get out of the way, their leader, Lutan, eventually kidnaps Tasha after a random holodeck tour. The crew does research and finds the aliens live by a nonsensical code of honor that led to Lutan kidnapping Tasha because reasons. The crew joins the aliens on the surface where they get along again for a while, and Picard says they are friendly and everything's great. Then Lutan announced that he wants to keep Tasha as his first wife. And then another wife instantly challenges her to the death to fight for the position. Lutan says they won't get anything from them if the challenge is refused. After debating whether or not to fight for a while and random scenes of Picard being friendly to Lutan and random data scenes, Tasha and the lady fight to the death with spiky poisoned oven mitts, and the episode finally ends.
Spiky poisoned oven mitts. Yeah, I love it.
Okay. And yeah, we're going to divide it into the good, the bad, and then like the odd / silly, like last time. I guess I'll start this time, because I think you started last time, Dylan.
I think I honestly don't remember.
So I have kind of 1.5 good things. There's this totally random out of place scene where Data is talking to Geordi, who's shaving with this like space razor.
Oh,
and this is while the crisis is going on the surface.
I have this under my silly, actually.
Yeah.
Just bizarrely out of place. But for some reason I enjoyed it.
I think it's good because they're trying to like develop Data's character a little bit and show that he doesn't understand humor fully.
Yeah.
It just was so out of place, but as its own thing, I thought it was good.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in here, and that was one of my good things, was just Data being Data in this episode. Because he's consistently, like, out of, like, the few episodes we've watched so far, like, he's
the best part.
The most enjoyable character. Like, even when I was younger and I used to watch the show in my spare time, like, Data was probably my favorite character, because he was just so... Like, he's so genuine in a lot of ways that it's just kind of funny to watch.
Yeah.
Then, I just remember when they're on the bridge talking about the aliens' transporter technology or whatever, and he starts going and it's like, but it uses the blah 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 with the blah blah blah, and then turns around and everyone's just staring at him, and he goes, that's not important at this time.
Yeah, he's one of the only... Yeah. And the other, like, half good point I had was that it does kind of establish some of the relationship between Riker and Picard. Because it shows, like, Riker is open in his log about, like, totally disagreeing with Picard's plan. Whatever that plan even was.
Yeah,
which Riker's like, I disagree. I'm disagreeing with him. It's like, it kind of sets up a little bit of a rival relationship that they have early on in the series, I remember.
Because actually, Picard tells him in the first episode, if I remember correctly, you know, I want you to question me. I want you to be argumentative, because I don't want you to just be my yes man.
And so, yeah, that's my other kind of good thing, because it's a good little bit of development. It's just both of these good things are just so random and out of place.
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's all I have for good points. Do you have any?
I do have a couple more. I do like the fact that Tasha doesn't take any shit from the guy in the beginning. Or kind of just like funny, just like, get out of my way, woman. Screw you, flip you over, you're gone.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I haven't really seen too much of the beginning of Next Generation, or if I have, it's been so long. But Tasha is one of those characters that just never gets developed too much, or doesn't really get all that much, like...
They're really weird with her in this episode, too, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But I like that. that was a good little thing where he flips him over. Excuse me.
Yep, he flips him the way around. And then I guess the only other thing I have is this is actually, from what I can tell, the first reference in this series, at least, to the Prime Directive. So
yeah,
it's a nice little, like, you know, hey, this is a thing that happens throughout a lot of the series. And actually, I'm excited when we finally get to the point, like, it's way down the line, but the Prime Directive is a constant thing that pops up in the show. And at one point, Picard actually gets placed on trial because he violates the Prime Directive so many times.
Yeah. I was a little confused by that. I'm just going to elaborate on that for a second. So they don't really explain what it is, I don't think, in this episode, do they? They just kind of... I don't know. Well, I tuned out a lot of the middle of the episode.
They briefly kind of say, like...
I know what it is, I just mean, like, you know, do they explain it?
Not particularly well.
Because they're already visiting this planet, so... And the Prime Directive before was, like, it's if they have warp drive, then we can interfere and contact them and whatever, but if they don't, we can't, right?
Yeah,
basically.
Sort of. It's kind of what I remember it being.
Can't, like, mess with the natural development of their society.
Yeah, that's mostly what it was, just not being able to interfere in the natural development of society, which is why, like, they don't ever really do much with, like, super undeveloped cultures.
Yeah. So in this episode, these people kidnap Tasha, and they already are spacefaring, obviously, and then they can't rescue her or just take the vaccine they need because of the Prime Directive, even though it was weird. But anyway,
there's actually a weird thing that Picard says later on when they're talking about the Prime Directive. It's like, he said something about, like, there's no point in going over what everyone already knows, and I'm just thinking... What is that supposed to mean? I don't understand.
So let's go on to the bad then, I say. So do you want to start?
Sure. I guess, like, one of the things is, like, I think the music is still cheesy as all heck.
It's so weird.
Well, it is. You gotta remember, this is still, like, late 80s, and from what I remember, like, late 80s stuff has, like, really weird music. I think we're gonna have to deal with, like, the weird cheesy music until the show finally hits.
I did look it up. It's composed in this episode. It's scored by one of the people who worked on the original series, and I noticed a lot of similar kind of cues to it.
Okay, so I wouldn't have noticed that because like I said in the first episode, I have never really watched the original series.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments where they're just sitting and nothing's really happening, and then it goes.
That actually reminds me, during, like, going down to the silly real quick, during the holodeck scene with Tasha and Lutan, that's his name, right?
Lutan, yeah.
Well, like, you know, she demonstrates her, like, martial arts or whatever, and then Lutan turns to her and he's like, your skill impresses me, and then suddenly he goes, dun 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 dun! It's like,
It's so weird. Yeah. There's a lot of scenes of just nothing happening in this episode in the first place, and then the crazy music cues over it.
Yeah, I think I remember Next Generation having a pretty big issue with that for, like, the first few seasons. But it's so 80s.
So, I guess my bad would just be that the episode is so dull.
It is.
Oh my god.
It is an incredibly boring episode.
Like, I love slow stuff that's slow for a reason, but this is just nothing happens in this episode. Like, they have to put in random scenes of Data trying to learn humor that have nothing to do with anything just to fill up time.
Well, it's like that stuff wouldn't have been that out of place in, like, the first episode because it was setting up the characters, but here it's just kind of, like, it's well done, it's just weird.
It's nothing to do with anything. But yeah, there's just so many scenes of them sitting discussing this alien culture's code of quote-unquote honor, and they just go over it over and over, and more and more research, and then they're on the planet, and then they're researching weapons and things, and it just goes on, and nothing's going on.
Yeah, that was my second bad thing, was the way I wrote this was just honor this, honor that, because it was just
like... It doesn't even make sense. What is their honor? I don't get it.
It's very, like, almost rampantly sexist in a way. Like, it's not quite as bad because basically the whole point of their culture was that women owned the land and the goods and men fight or something.
Well, their culture was sexist, kind of. I don't know.
It is sexist. It's not as bad as it could have been, I guess, but it's still like, wow.
And it brings me back to that quote from Jonathan Frakes that he actually said the episode is a racist piece of shit. And I wonder why they made the decision to have this tribal planet in the first place and then arbitrarily make all of them African people. Like,
yeah,
they talk like with that African kind of accent.
Yeah, it's very like.
It's
a strange choice.
I didn't really think about it until I was looking up the quotes right after I was done, and it's just like, wow.
Yeah, I didn't think about it. I didn't think about it until you mentioned it. And I was
a lot of alien races in Star Trek are really monolithic in the first place.
Yeah,
you know, like all Klingons look the same, and all Romulans look the same, and
well, and they're all humanoid in some way because budget.
Yeah. This is gonna be a long one. Yeah, it's just so dull. Is the point. And what's your next bad? I got a long list.
My final bad. Like, I honestly had trouble just thinking of stuff up because this episode was just so dull and honestly uninspired. Because I almost actually kind of laughed out loud when they brought up the whole fight to the death bit because it was so oh really, a fight to the death episode in Star Trek? No way.
And it happened so suddenly too. Because Luton is like, I want to make you my first, and then while he's just finishing talking, he's like, I want to make you my first. I fight you to the death.
It is very strange. Well, that actually wasn't my bad, but it was just something I wanted to bring up. But my last bad thing is there's a lack of urgency in this episode because the whole point of them wanting to get the vaccine is that there's this horrible plague on some planet. Steerus something or other, and it's supposed to be super deadly and kill millions. And it's you're really acting rather calmly for the fact that there's a planet out there where millions are going to die.
Yeah, Geordi and Data are making jokes, and
it's haha, it's funny, people are dying somewhere else in the universe. Ha ha ha.
Picard is having drinks with Tasha's captor. Yeah.
It really feels like they threw that in there just to have a reason for them not just charging in, stunning everyone, and just taking Tasha. That's really the only reason the plague subplot even exists was to create a forced moral dilemma.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my last bad. From what you told me, I think you have a lot.
I really hate Tasha in this episode, and it's not the actress's fault. It's what they did. So it turns out that Tasha is really attracted to the guy who captures her, Luton, and they make a point that she's really attracted to him. And then it cuts to the point where at the end, the wife that she defeats in the fight is do you want him? And Tasha's no, it would be complicated. And that's her reason. It was really weird. I just hate oh, he's so manly and attractive, and he captured me. I love him. That's her only reason for not just staying on that planet is that it would just be too complicated. I don't know. I was kind of laughing at that.
Well, this whole episode's kind of just goofy. Just like I said, there's so much talk about honor that it's just hard to actually take anything that's going on in this episode seriously.
Yeah, Tasha getting Stockholm syndrome was just really bizarre.
Yeah.
I don't. And then a lot of this could be bad or the silly. So I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, this could probably all be under the silly. Wesley lurking in the background of the turbo lift like a creep. And then there's one scene where they're just coming up to the bridge, and then Wesley pokes his creeper head out from the turbo lift.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. I do like that they at least have that consistent thread going on where he really wants to get on the bridge rather than just dropping it. But Wesley is still kind of annoying at this point in the show.
He's such a weird...
He's got that derpy smile every time, and it's just ugh.
Yeah, and then when Crusher, going off of that thread, Crusher and Picard meet in the office, and Crusher actually kind of gets mad at Picard that Wesley isn't allowed on the bridge, and I'm just thinking, aren't there dozens of kids on this ship? Are we just gonna let them all on the bridge now? The heart of the ship? Like, why would you even want your kid on the bridge? It's a weird. I've used that word a lot for this episode because it's all weird, but it's a weird plot thread that makes no sense to me. So.
Alright, yeah, sorry if that actually got caught. My phone just went off.
That's okay. And of course, the convenient, unreplicatable medicine, which is one of the ultimate Trek plot devices. Sadly.
I noticed that Star Trek really does do a lot of that, like, just convenient, like, almost Deus Ex Machina things that just force them to take a rather, like, long-winded way of doing stuff. Just like how there's, the plague plot device that has no other purpose other than to force them to not just beam in there, stun everyone, and take Tasha back. So they have to go this long-winded, like, honor, blah, de blue, de blue.
Yeah. A couple of my other sillies, and then I'm probably not going to go off everything on my list because it would just go on forever. I enjoyed Picard getting butthurt about the French thing that Data says, where he refers to it as some, what is it, an obscure language?
Oh, yeah. I remember that. It's like, oh, yeah. It took me like a couple of seconds to realize why it was like such a thing. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Because he's supposed to be French
name.
even though he's an English guy.
Yeah.
That was really silly. I don't know if I enjoyed that it was in there or not.
I just thought it was funny. Yeah, but it was just sort of odd.
Then when Luton first kidnaps Tasha, and then Picard gets on the screen and says, "You have committed an unfriendly act," and I was like, Jesus, like,
laying down the hard words. Man.
Like, that's kind of a weak language for someone stealing one of your crew members. Anyway, your turn, I suppose.
Well, the only other thing I have on here is under the silly, and it was just this weird thing I noticed, like, at least in the beginning of the episode, like, anytime, like, you first see Luton in a scene, he's doing, like, the Mr. Burns evil finger pyramid thing. Yeah. I noticed it, and I was like, why?
Yeah, he does do that quite a bit.
Show that he's scheming or something, but it was just, like, I noticed it, like, 2 or 3 times, and just sitting there, like,
he does.
Why, man?
He does a lot of creepy things. His whole character is creepy.
There with, like, the evil finger pyramid and thinking.
Just the whole tribal primitive level of the species that they arbitrarily cast as African people really kind of just disturbed me a little bit.
Yeah, like once I actually like thought about it, and I was like, oh wow, like I didn't even really like consider it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really weird. Really weird.
Yeah, it was. There's a lot of bad things that could go on forever. But it's just so dull. I don't even want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, you did
I agree.
Fairly half-hearted Star Trek theme for this episode.
I agree with Michael Dorn calling it the worst episode of Star Trek ever filmed. Because a lot of the episodes that are bad are at least enjoyable in their badness. Season 3 of the original series has a lot of really bad episodes, but they're enjoyable still. This is just not even enjoyable bad. It's just a slog.
It's dull, it's pointless. I don't know. Like, I had a feeling this episode was going to be
terrible.
Because you and I both said at the end of the last podcast when we finished, we both just were talking about and I don't even really remember this episode.
Yeah, I had never seen it before because I have read that it was terrible.
Yeah, I think I even said I don't remember this episode. I think there's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
And now I know why, because it's stupid.
Yeah, it's racist and boring, utterly pointless. Does nothing to advance any of the characters or anything of the show. I guess that advances the plot thread of Wesley being a pathetic little child who's super needy because he ends up on the bridge, which is all he ever wanted.
Oh yeah, because eventually he does enter Starfleet and becomes a cadet.
Yeah, but he's still this little boy on the bridge for a lot of the early seasons. Yeah.
And it always feels just very awkward. They even they basically repeated the whole scene from the first episode where Wesley's standing in the turbo lift and Picard's just come on, just get in here.
Yeah.
I remember that just thinking this is basically just a repeat of the beginning of of the series when Picard did that.
Yeah, Wesley's just a horrible character.
Except without, the super cheesy music when he's looking
Also,
around.
is it just me, or was Worf not in this episode?
You're right, Worf wasn't in this episode. Maybe because of,
I don't know, he's also just not a main character yet either. Maybe they didn't intend for him to be a main character in the beginning, and then once they had the first couple episodes with him where he was the focal point, they decided to make him a main character.
It's possible, but I mean, it is weird because they specifically set him up as being on one of the front doohickeys. I don't know what you want. Panels?
Stations, yeah.
Yeah, one of the front stations. Like, I think he's actually Khan or whatever. Or the Khan station.
Khan!
Well, that's what they call it, man. Yeah, I'm just going off what I hear in the show.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of anything else. It's just the fact that this racistly depicted tribal species who's practically in the Stone Age could come up with a magical vaccine that no one else in the galaxy has come up with.
Not to mention transporter technology.
Yeah.
That's like the most advanced thing they have, which I find kind of bizarre. Because, everything you see of them is like practically... I don't know how to put this, but it's like really almost ancient looking in a way.
Yeah, there's one exterior shot of that city, and it's a bunch of mud huts, basically, like sandstone looking.
Like it's like almost like Middle Eastern style architecture.
It's though everything was just horribly thought out and badly executed in this episode, and I enjoyed reading about how all the cast members consider it stupid and racist. So at least we're not alone.
Yep. I feel bad for the guy who wrote this episode.
I don't.
He was probably told to get the hell off the set after that.
I don't know if they thought it was bad at the time, but
yeah, it might have been different standards or something. I honestly don't know, but after you mentioned out with the cast out of it, you think about it, and it's this episode is kind of racist.
Yeah, can we be done talking about it?
Yeah, I'll just seal it off with saying this is definitely the worst episode we've watched thus far.
It's the worst
episode. The second episode, it might be weird and just inconsistent, but at least it sort of had a point. Whereas this episode just has absolutely no function.
There was at least some good character development in the terrible episode we watched last time.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that episode was terrible. This episode, however...
Well, the last episode was mostly just silly. And I think I would have been more okay with it if it wasn't the second episode of the show.
Yeah, that's the part of the problem, is it's just so... hey, we're making this episode, it's the second episode, it's completely off the wall.
I'm trying to imagine being a Trekkie watching this show for the first time as it was airing, wondering, what the hell are they doing with this show?
I feel like that goes with a lot of Star Trek, though, because the thing I always find kind of weird, even just coming from being a fan of the franchise as well, is just the shows are always so inconsistent.
Especially the first seasons are usually pretty terrible.
Yeah, it's weird how just blatantly badly made some of this stuff is, and yet this is one of the most beloved Star Trek series.
Well, the first season of this show is pretty inconsistent, and then I remember DS9's first season. It's my favorite Trek show, but that first season is also really rough. Voyager's first season, I remember it was really short. I remember my problem with Voyager. We don't need to get into that too much, but this is they had these plot threads they didn't go after. But in this show, I'm curious to see what the first episode that we think is really good is going to be, because even the pilot I wasn't a big fan of.
It's okay. It has its good moments, but
the pilot was at least more of a product of its time. It's just a different era of TV than the end of the show was. So it's more it's excusable. It's not their fault as much, because all TV was paced like that. At least it had a point. This doesn't have a point. It's stupid. I'm never gonna watch it again as long as I live.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna avoid this episode too. To watch through the series again.
Well, on to episode 4 then, right?
I'll just cap this off by saying it is part of the reason why I think the early episodes are so bad is because Next Generation is caught at this time when TV is radically changing. Because it is definitely going to be interesting once we finally get to the last episode and just compare it to the first one, just how different the show is then.
Yeah. Well, and this show is the one that pushed a lot of those changes too. So we'll see it within this show, the evolution.
It was an interesting show to start with for this because it pushes a lot of the changes and it definitely evolves so much over the course of 7 seasons.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Peace out, people.